Committee meeting. Those committee members are Freeman, Fusco, Amobian, Connor, and Malik. We do have all members present. We're just waiting for a few to connect to video. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
All right. All right, are we ready to go, Sarah?
We're ready.
All right. I'd like to call the Rules Committee meeting to order, and I do believe that Mr. Bibiano reported that we have all members present. I do need a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Have a motion, a second. All in favor, please let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, we have one item coming up before us here, and this is a resolution expressing opposition to House Bill 616, a bill that has been introduced in the Ohio General Assembly, which would limit how teachers educate kindergarten through 12 students about sexual orientation and gender identity, and how teachers educate kindergarten through 12 students about racism, reaffirming the City of Akron's support of the LGBTQ community and declaring an emergency. And I would probably invite any or all of the sponsors, if you'd like to speak, we'd give you opportunity to do that at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could begin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Many of us have seen in the last week this bill introduced in the Ohio State House. It's a copy of the Florida Don't Say Gay legislation. And the Florida law prohibits discussion in the classroom, in the K-3 classroom, of sexual orientation and gender identity. It sounds like some reasonable thing. We shouldn't be talking about, sex in a classroom with young children. But what it really means in practice is that if there's a book that has two parents or has two moms or two dads, right, that book would be prohibited. It really is incredibly chilling in terms of how it would allow conversations to happen in the classroom, and it's an attack on our LGBTQ plus community. But our bill here in Ohio goes beyond that, because it prohibits in grades 4 to 12 discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in any way that's inappropriate. Well, as a lawyer, I would say that that's pretty vague, right? And it's going to, again, chill the discussion of important issues and really prevent our students from getting the education that they need, and particularly stigmatizing LGBTQ plus students and their families. On top of that, the bill goes even further, because it takes in legislation that's currently in our state house and in other state houses, banning quote-unquote divisive concepts like critical race theory. Now, this is a solution in search of a problem, because we're not teaching critical race theory in any of our high schools or middle schools or elementary schools. But like I said, it's not just limited to critical race theory. It prohibits the teaching of any quote-unquote divisive concept as determined by the Ohio State Board of Education. Now, I think education requires a discussion of things that sometimes are divisive, and that shouldn't be entirely up to the State Board of Education. And in this way, it's really prohibiting and limiting how we talk about our history in America, and particularly how we talk about racism and systemic racism. For all of those reasons, I think it's very important that we oppose this legislation as a community, as a council, as a city. We're a city that really prides ourselves on our LGBTQ plus community, on our racial minority community, and we should stand with those communities and oppose this terrible legislation. I would defer to any of my co-sponsors on this.
Okay, thank you. Let me come to Ms. Holland next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would absolutely echo my colleague, Councilman Malik's comments, and I would emphasize that this council has already taken a stand in part on the contents of this House bill when a number of weeks ago we opposed a similar resolution that was directed at the idea of critical race theory being introduced in our public schools. In this particular instance, we have a virtual carbon copy of Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay law. What we have here is the use of terms like sexual orientation and gender identity. But what is really being said in this proposed bill is anything that does not conform to heterosexual orientation. The plain meaning is that the sponsors of this legislation in the State House wish to exclude a considerable segment of our Ohio population. They're also asking the state of Ohio to take a stand on what a family is. And what we know from experience and from decisions by our federal courts, including the United States Supreme Court, is that love is love, and that families are families. It is a hard job and a noble job to be a school teacher. We also know that. Many of us have had experiences in the classroom as instructors. To place an additional burden on school teachers, school administrators, and an already heavily burdened public school system by a law like this makes no sense. And for all these reasons, I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of this particular resolution and would ask my council colleagues to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Amobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly support everything that's been said. It's hard to believe that we are in the 21st. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's hard to believe that we are in the 21st century and talking about not disclosing things that we know are pretty much in our everyday lives. And we need to particularly pay emphasis on the fact that all of the things they're talking about in this law would make us less progressive and less sophisticated about what we do in education. I mean, education should be the one environment where you should be able to learn, exchange ideas, and just develop an understanding of various issues from a sensible and intelligent dialogue. And here I am in my 60s. I grew up in an environment where these things were not discussed. You know, race, sex, and all those things. And we certainly don't want our children to grow up in that kind of environment. I mean, this should be typical everyday teaching and learning. And we'll talk about making our kids critical thinkers. And if we're doing that, all of these issues should be part of their education and part of their discussions in the classroom. So I strongly support this, and I hope tonight we'll do it as mayor and council as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, I do see a hand. I'm not sure if that's the administration. Just as Akron City Council, I see a hand up there.
That's me, Mr. Chair. I wanted to let you know that Councilwoman Connor has her hand raised, and also Councilman Fusco.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll come to Councilwoman Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to just add, I would love to be added to this piece of legislation. You know, when you talk about decisive and discussing crucial subject matter, less than 50 years ago, disabled people were told to put your child in a home and not let them out in public. So, although I'm not in the same category, and there are a lot of different categories, I do feel the sting of this type of legislation also, and would be proud to support it.
Thank you very much. And next, I believe, was coming to Councilman Fusco.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. The yeah, amazingly overreaching this, and it's amazing how spoke about teachers. Nancy Holland spoke about teachers, and teachers have some of the toughest jobs out there right now. And if I understand this correctly, you know, a parent can just turn a teacher in if they're not happy with what's discussed, go directly to the Ohio School Board, and file a complaint, and then they could lose their license. That school district can also lose funding as a result of that. It's just amazing to me how overreaching this actually is. And what kind of a signal are we sending? You know, we call ourselves, here in Akron, we call ourselves a welcoming city, and I'd like to think we are, and I think this is taking a stance on that. Welcoming city, truly welcoming everyone. But what kind of a signal are we sending in this state to beyond our borders, to other states? You know, something like this is passed. It's not welcoming whatsoever. And so it's amazingly, again, to me, amazingly overreaching in how out of control things can be in certain sectors of our government. But I'm proud to stand with my colleagues on this in support of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fusco. And next I'll come to Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been following somewhat what's been going on. Need to be educated a little bit more, but I'm just going to speak from this. This strikes a sensitive topic to me of something I feel I was robbed of as a parent. I can remember when I thought it was time for me to sit down and have the conversation about the birds and the bees with my son. And when I sat down to have the conversation, he was like, "Oh, Dad, we already talked about that in school." And I'm speaking of sexuality, period. And it may not relate to this bill per se, but I'm speaking just as a parent of being robbed of having that conversation with my son. So from what I've been following of this, I support standing in opposition, but I would like to have a little bit more conversation about, since we're having this conversation, about whenever this takes place, a conversation in school about sexual orientation, be it whatever type of conversation it is. I believe the parents need to have more input. I would have loved to have received a letter saying, "Hey, this week we're going to talk about the birds and the bees. Would you like to be a part of that conversation with your child?" That's, like I said, this right here is taking me back. My son is now 29 years old. So, you know, it must really be sticking with me if all of a sudden I'm having a flashback. So I'm just saying, because I hear teachers, I hear state, I don't want us to, I don't care what we're teaching when it comes to the human anatomy and procreation. Let us respect the parents' wishes so that they're engaged. It's our school's responsibility is to support families in the education of their children, not to just always take the lead. And so, sorry for giving my personal perspective to this, because I'd love to hear from others. Like I said, from what I've been following, I support this, but I do want to speak to whatever's taught. It should not take away the parents' right to have a say-so if their child should be exposed to it at that time, because all of our children are at different levels of development. And for me, I was looking to have this special conversation, and I was robbed of that moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neal. Do I have another hand up in the chambers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Gert Wilms, Chief of Staff, is here.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Hi, Councilman Freeman, Gert Wilms from the Mayor's Office.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Mayor Horrigan rises in opposition to House Bill 616 as well. I would applaud this council for the non-discrimination ordinance that you had the courage to do, to take us forward, to be welcoming and warming. The exact opposite what the state of Ohio is doing at this point. So again, I applaud you for your courage, showing leadership, leading the way when we are not getting that same cooperation, same respect, and keep lowering the bar at the state level. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to come to Ms. Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that there is a useful illustration of exactly how this proposed legislation would operate. Each of my 3 children in around kindergarten or first grade were assigned a family tree project in which each were required to bring in an illustration of their parentage and their parents' parentage and so forth. And literally, it was done in the format of a tree with branches. Under the language and provisions of this particular piece of legislation, the child of same-sex parents would actually introduce information and topics and language that would be violative of this legislation. In turn, this could result in suspension or revocation of the license of the teacher. This could affect the standing of the school in terms of funding, and so forth and so on. It's not always necessary to operate as a lawyer when I'm looking at things like this, but sometimes it's helpful. I think that what is troubling about this legislation is exactly what a few of my colleagues have pointed out, that what this is facially discriminatory. Discrimination wears many different hats, but discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation is every bit as pernicious as discrimination on the basis of age, gender, race, religion, national origin, and disability. Discrimination is discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I see another hand up in the chambers.
Yes. Mr. Chair, Councilwoman Mosley has her hand raised, and also Councilman Malik.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Mosley?
Thank you, Chairman Freeman. Just briefly, I agree with all the sentiments of my colleagues and Ms. Wilms. Overreaching is definitely happening in Columbus. And this bill wants to prohibit the teachings of the past, the present, and the future. And I think we really need to pay attention to what's going on here. To me, everything they're doing is intentional. This is just the beginning, in my opinion, of what they seek to make law here in the state of Ohio. There's a part in here that I think that I want to make sure our colleagues know and see this within HB 616 is they're not just talking about the LGBTQ community. They're talking about teachers who want to educate the students about racism. And that little line in there is the next opening to where they're going to go. Today it'll be the LGBTQ community. Next thing you know, they're going to be bringing up critical race theory because that's their little word now they want to use to scare people, like the boogeyman. And I think we need to pay attention to that. I understand what Councilman Neal is stating. I know when we were in school, when they taught about sex and protection in our health class, we had to go home with a permission slip. So I would rather us go home, our children to come home with a permission slip than them prohibiting what our students and our kids are going to be taught, because this is just the beginning. What's next? Are we going to be burning books to make sure our kids aren't learning certain things? Because we're now reflecting back to our past. So I appreciate Councilman Malik bringing this forward and allowing us to co-sponsor this resolution. And I think that we really need to pay attention to what's going on in Columbus, because they are trying to emulate what is going on in other states. They tried this in Arizona. Thank God that they actually had a court that overturned them not talking about critical race theory in Arizona. But that's where we're heading. So I think we have to be very vigilant in our activities here in the city of Akron if we're going to continue to say that we're a welcoming community. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Sarah, you said Councilman Malik would like to speak?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two short points. First, I want to appreciate my colleague Councilwoman Mosley pointed out in the title clause for the law department, I think we do want to make sure that it says reaffirming the city's support for the LGBTQ plus community and also for racial minority communities as well. So that was an oversight. But also to Councilwoman Mosley's point, just want to kind of reflect for a second, also Councilwoman Holland made this point, on what it means when we talk about critical race theory, right? We hear about this in the news, and there's this scary idea that people are going to come and your teachers are going to teach white kids to feel like they did something wrong, or to being taught like university and law school level Ivy League scary ideas. What it means is that the Akron Beacon Journal article that was published last month about the Inner Belt, talking about how the Inner Belt destroyed black communities, maybe that wouldn't be able to be taught in a senior level English class at Firestone or Ellett or North. Right? It's really about not having a fair and accurate and true depiction of our history. And so, these buzzwords sometimes mask what is, a really important thing.
All right. Any other comments? Look around, Sarah. Am I missing anyone or anybody?
Mr. Chair, Councilman Fusco has his hand raised.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Fusco.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Freeman. The comments that Mr. Malik had made makes a lot of sense, and perhaps what we could do is legally, I don't know if we need to just table it and then pull the committee tonight, or if we could approve it in committee subject to an amendment. I'm not sure, because I believe that we should move on this in a timely fashion. Yeah, subject to an amendment. Can we? I just want to make sure we do this correctly, because we don't often.
Yeah, this is.
Usually, it's between committees. Whenever we do something, we make an adjustment.
Right. You could certainly take time on it in committee today. And then I can read in the substitute offered as an amendment tonight, and Councilman Freeman could poll the committee at that time.
Okay with that? Everybody okay? Okay, then I'd make a motion for temporary, or for time, or temporary time.
Second.
Okay, now having time hearing over here. Sounds like there's been a motion and a second made. And Sarah, was that for time?
Correct. The consensus here in chambers was that because they would like a change made to the title clause, they would like the law department to bring in a substitute offered as an amendment to make that correction, and then take time and then poll the committee this evening on the substitute.
Okay, we have a motion for time. All in favor of time, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, then any opposed to time? We'll get time and then, excuse me, we'll wait for the amendment to come in this evening. And I believe that that's all we had in our Rules Committee, and we will adjourn at 2:53. Thank you.
Our next committee of the day is the Health and Social Services Committee. Those committee members are Amobian, Freeman, Baylor, Neal, and Holland. We do have all members present. We'll just wait for a few to return to video.
Are you ready for me?
Councilman Freeman, are you still here with us?
Can you do roll calls here?
He's here now. Absolutely. Health and Social Services Committee meeting. Would you like to call your meeting to order, Madam Chair?
Yes, let's call the Health and Social Services Committee meeting to order.
Amobian?
Roll call. Here.
Freeman? Baylor?
Hi.
Neal?
Here.
And Holland. Holland?
Aye.
Okay, all members are present, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. All members are present. Is that correct, Sarah?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. May I have a motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting, please?
So moved.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have one piece of, the minutes are passed. We have one piece of legislation come before us today. It's a resolution approving and confirming the appointment of Bambi Lynn Miller to the Commission on Aging and declaring an emergency. I don't know if Bambi is present or not, but I have worked with her through the Metropolitan Housing Authority. I don't know if this is our first time ever having someone from the Metro system as part of this aging commission. Correct me if I'm wrong, because this is a critical piece of what you hear about from seniors all the time, is the issues of transportation. So, this is a fantastic appointment, so I'm very pleased. So, is she present, and did she want to say something before the members are allowed to speak?
Thank you very much.
Sarah?
Yes, Madam Chair, she's here.
Okay.
Thank you very
Maybe
much.
would you like to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Thank you, Councilwoman Obibian. I appreciate that very, very much. I have worked with Metro for just short of 15 years, and in that entire time, I have been what has been called in the community the director of SCAT. So I have been an advocate for seniors and persons with disabilities. I was also a caregiver to my father, who recently passed of Alzheimer's, so I understand the struggle from a desk as well as from my heart and in my home. This is a very important commission that we have. I've attended all the meetings, worked closely with everyone on that committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to have Metro at that table so that we can continue to look at age-friendly Akron and Summit County and make sure that we can continue to help our seniors and persons with disabilities. Thank you very much, and thank you, council members.
Well, thank you very much for making yourself available to serve. Are there members of the committee who wish to speak? I don't see any hands. Sarah, can you see any hands, please?
I do not see any committee members with their hands raised, Madam Chair, but I do see Councilman Fusco and Councilman Malik here in chambers that would like to speak.
Sure, by all means. Go ahead, Councilman Fusco.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, all I can say is from attending some of the meetings, Bambi Lynn Miller will make a strong commission even stronger, and welcome. And it's maybe a little premature, we haven't voted on it yet, but I'm sure that you will do a great job with that commission that is, again, a strong commission, make it even stronger. Thank you.
Councilman Malik.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just want to echo those same sentiments. I really appreciate the work that Metro does with here at SCAT. I know a lot of my residents appreciate it as well, and I know that it's going to get better with the reimagined Metro process. And I really appreciate your willingness to serve on this commission, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other council members wishing to make a statement? Or
Madam Chair, I can see that Councilwoman Connor has her hand raised.
please, Councilwoman Connors, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a user of SCAT, I can't say enough great things about it. I've used it a number of times. The service is impeccable. Your workers are great with assisting people getting in and out, and I look forward to this. I think you have a great bit to offer the Senior Commission, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Are there any other hands raised, sir?
Yes, Madam Chair, Gert Wilms would like to speak.
Those are all the hands you can see, you said?
No, Chief of Staff Gert Wilms would like to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. By all means, Gert, please.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Not only has Bambi agreed to serve on the commission, she's agreed to be the secretary once she is appointed. So we are asking for suspension of the rules so we can start taking advantage of that opportunity.
And by all means, may I have a motion to suspend the rules and...
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion to for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations, Bambi, and thank you so very much for your service. And is there anything else to come before the committee? If not, we are adjourned.
Our final committee of the day is the Public Utilities and Green Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, McKittrick, Connor, Mosley, and Holland. We do have all members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you. We'll call the Public Utilities and Green Committee meeting to order. If we could please have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
So move.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very, very much. We have an ordinance authorizing the service director and or purchasing agent to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the purchase and installation of a water meter testing bench at the Triplet Water Distribution Building, authorizing payment therefor, and declaring an emergency. And who will be speaking for us here?
I will, Mr. Chairman. Chris Luddle, Service Director. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Thank you, Mr. Luddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This will allow us to bid a new water meter testing bench. It is a machine that has a 10-gallon and 100-gallon water tank. What we do presently is if there's a discrepancy or we need to calibrate our meters, we bring them into this testing bench. And this bench, the way we spec it, will meet or exceed American Water Works Association standard. It is something that with the new meters project we feel is very important. This will allow us to test meters, not only the small residential ones, but also the commercial meters. So currently what happens is if there's a discrepancy with one of our customers, we will go out, put a new meter in, we bring the other meter back in and verify that it is working correctly. If it is under-reporting, we typically don't go back and adjust the bill. We just move on with the new meter and the new technology. So the existing water meter testing bench out at water supply or water distribution is about 70 years old. It's well beyond its useful life. And with that, consent would be fine, but I will take any questions.
Okay, great. Any questions? I'm looking at my screen. I do not see any hands. Sarah, any questions from the chambers?
Mr. Chair, I don't see any hands raised at this time.
I'm sorry, were there any questions from the chamber?
There are no questions from chambers, Mr. Chair.
Oh, very good. We have a motion for consent agenda then.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Luddle. We will get that on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I think you're muted.
I only had one item on my agenda here. Am I missing something, Sarah?
No, that was it. That's all we had today, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Very good. Okay, we will adjourn at 3:04. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that is our final committee meeting of the day. Council will meet at 7 p.m. tonight.